Hello. Today's lecture, we're going to talk about the skin, our largest organ. So, in this first part, you're going to be able to identify the general layers of the skin and state the functions of skin. So when you think of skin, you think of dermal. And the main part of the skin is the dermis. Now, on top of the dermis is the epidermis. Epi is upon. And if you remember from the last chapter, the top layer is squamosal, so it is stratified squamosal epithelial. Now, the dermis is sitting on the hypodermis. Hypo is below. The hypodermis is not part of the skin. So we have our slide here, or a picture, I guess. We have the epidermis on top, and this is stratified squamosal epithelial. It's falling off all the time. It's making all the dust in your house. It's superficial. The dermis is deeper, and it is made up of areolar connective tissue up here, dense irregular connective tissue down here. The hypodermis is below, and it is subcutaneous fat. Now, the dermis has all the cool structures. There's a skin gland making oil. There's a sweat gland. Here is another oil gland. Oh, there's a hair follicle. Sensory receptors, blood vessels. The dermis has all the cool stuff. However, we're going to have to look at the epidermis for a while as well. So, what's the function of the skin? It prevents water loss. What separates you and reptiles and birds from amphibians is you can be dropped in the middle of a desert and you do not dry out instantly. You take poor little Jeremiah the bullfrog, you put him in the desert, he is toast within 20 minutes. So it prevents water loss, which means it's waterproof. Metabolic regulation, it makes vitamin D, and it excretes things like uric acid and lactic acid and other waste products. It also cools you. All that sweat, it's metabolic regulation. Immune defense. That is talked about in physiology in the immune chapter. Protects deeper tissues. And senses. Your sense of touch. The itsy bitsy spider crawling up your leg. We'll talk about them in a second. Temperature. Sitting in your hot tub for an hour after exercising feels very nice. And pain. Did I mention exercising? So, we're going to look at the epidermis. The epidermis is divided into 5 strata. So the epidermis is divided into 5 strata. And we're going to look at the functions of each of these strata. And you'll have to tell me what cells are there, what the function is, and rank it from deep to superficial, or vice versa. In lab, you're going to have to identify the layers on histology slides. So remember our dermis and our epidermis? The epidermis has 5 layers. The first layer is made up of these cube-shaped cells, and they're mainly stem cells. So this layer is mostly stem cells. There are some melanocytes, though, and melanocytes make melanin. I really want to call them melanocytes because they make melanin, but really is melanin. And lastly, it has some tactile cells in it, and these are the cells that are going to detect the itsy-bitsy scorpion that just landed on your shoulder, or the itsy-bitsy spider crawling up your leg, because it's after the itsy-bitsy scorpion. So the epidermis is made up of stratified squamosal epithelia. Remember, it's squamosal on the top layer, not the bottom layer. So here we have the stratified squamosal and the shingle-like cells on top. Here's our first layer. That is our cube layer, called the stratum basale. Here's our second layer. Our very thin third layer. Our special thick skin layer. Oops. And then our 5th layer. So it's made up of 5 layers called strata. It's hard, it protects. Now the stratum basale is the deepest layer. So the dermis would be right here. This makes it look columnar. They're more cuboidal on the cells slides I've seen. And that is the stratum basale. I like to think of Hermione Granger in Harry Potter casting a spell, saying basale, basale. It means base. Now, it has lots of stem cells undergoing mitosis, and they are making keratinocytes. So all these cells up here are the keratinocytes that the stratum basale made. Now, we have 3 layers, or 3 types of cells in here. These are the stem cells. Oh, look, it's in metaphase. making the keratinocytes. We also have these melanocytes making melanin, and we have tactile cells. Those are connected to neurons, letting us know about the itsy bitsy spider on our leg. So our next layer is the stratum spinosum. We're going to start with round shaped cells, and by the time we're done, we're going to end up with these very oval flat cells like so. This layer gets its name because there are spines connecting the cells. So it's spiny, so spinosum. And these cells are making keratin, which is going to toughen the skin. Unfortunately, keratin is hydrophobic. It doesn't like water. The water leaves the cell going, I'm moving out. That's why they're shrinking, but it's also killing the poor cell. So this is our second layer, the stratum spinosum. We have the spines here connecting the cells. Those are actually going to form desmosomes. So have you ever gone to the beach, gone to suntan, and then your skin just peels in sheets? That's because they're connected with these desmosomes. Now they're making keratin, but the keratin is going to fill up the cell. It's going to shrink to see how that's just a lot smaller than that cell, and it's going to eventually die. But not yet. It dies in the next layer. Now the cells are migrating upwards. Now every once in a while you'll see a white blood cell. There's probably a cell called a dendritic cell. We'll worry about those, what they actually do later. But you do need to know there are white blood cells in this level. Our next layer is the stratum granulosum. And, oops, I drew that way too big. It's going to have these flat cells, and it's usually only a couple cell layers thick. Now it gets its name because it's granular. So there's all these granules in it, and it's making glycolipids. That's going to waterproof the skin. So your skin is waterproof. It's also forming tight junctions. Tight junctions do not let water in past this level. So the stratum granulosum's next. It's named because it's granular. I don't think you're seeing the red dots there. And it's forming a barrier. They're not letting water through. And this glycolipid is going to waterproof your skin. The organelles are going to die. Poor organelles. And the cytoplasm is basically keratin. So the last two layers, lucidum and corneum, are these very tough dead cell layers that are going to fall off. Wait a second, it's waterproof. So how come when I'm sitting in my hot tub for an hour and a half, because I just went for a very hard run, that my feet become prunes and my hands become prunes? The next layer is really fun to draw. Ta-da! It is the stratum lucidum. It gets its name because it is clear, lucid, on histology. Now this is only in thick skin. So where do your hands become pruny, your feet become pruny? That's it. That's the only places you have the stratum lucidum. It's probably padding for walking, and most primates are knuckle walkers or use their hands for walking as well. So that's one explanation. Some researchers did a study about 6 or 7 years ago where they had two groups. One group tried to grab as many marbles as they could out of a wet bowl in 30 seconds. They were not very successful. The other group pre-soaked their hands. Their hands became pruny, and they were able to grab a lot more marbles out of the bowl of water than the group that just went right in. So some researchers are wondering, does it let us grab things in water better? Because some people think that humans are aquatic apes. Do not say what ape to anthropologists, they'll froth at the mouth. And humans did migrate out of Africa through waterways. So it makes sense that hominids that can grab onto things in water better would produce more children. So that's the two theories behind this. I don't care about either theory. I care the stratum lucidum is in thick skin, which is your palms and your feet. The stratum granulosum is producing, the stratum lucidum is in our thick skin. So I will ask you, Where is the stratum lucidum? You'll say palms and bottoms of your feet. And water fills it up because the granulosum is waterproof. So the corneum is the last layer. And we're going to have these shingle-like cells. I should probably make them orange like above it. And these are the cells that are always falling off and making all the dust in your house. So these are dead cells. They're shingle-like. Because they are flat cells, that is why it is stratified squamosal epithelia. Remember, I am asking you that on the test. What is the epidermis made of? So we have the flat dead cells that fall off. So the stratum corneum, shingle-like dead cells. They're filled with keratin, they're anchored, they're tough, and they're falling off everywhere. So, my wife and I just watched Star Trek Discovery, and it was one of the out episodes, I think, so it was like a 10-minute episode, and the discovery was 3 million years in the future, something like that, and there was no dust in the entire ship. It was also free of people. Remember where I said the dust comes from? These falling off. I'm sure the backhoe outside my house right now, digging a hole, is helping for the dust, but a lot of your dust in your house is your skin. So, on the test, you need to know what the layers of the skin are, and you have to know them from deep to superficial, and vice versa. So, the stratum basale, that's making the stem cells. That is making more cells. We have the stratum spinosum. Those are our spiny cells. They're making keratin. We have our waterproofing stratum granulosum, our stratum lucidum and thick skin, then our dead cells falling off in our corneum. So, why don't you define these, and I will come back in our next video and explain what they are.